6 athletes. 6 pieces of equipment that were supposed to help them win. Instead, the equipment killed them. From a wax that suffocated a marathon runner from the inside, to a snow grooming machine that crushed a man's face beyond recognition. Every one of these stories has the same chilling pattern. The people in charge knew the danger. They sent the athlete out anyway. How many warnings does it take before a sport finally listens to the people it puts on the starting line? He told his wife he would either win or he would die. He kept half of that promise. His name was Francisco Lázaro. He was 21 years old, a carpenter from Lisbon, Portugal, and on July 14th, 1912, he was the man chosen to carry the Portuguese flag at the very first Olympic Games his country had ever entered, Stockholm, Sweden, the 5th modern Olympic Games. The whole country was watching. The marathon began at 1:48 p.m. The temperature on the road was over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Some sources say it pushed past 100. Sweden in summer is rarely that hot. Lázaro had thought about the heat. He had come up with what he believed was a clever idea. He covered most of his body in a thick yellow wax called sweat. Sweat is the hard fat that builds up around the kidneys of cows and sheep. He believed 2 things about the wax. First, it would block the sun. Second, and this was the dangerous part, he believed it would stop him from sweating. Less sweat, he thought, meant lighter body weight. Lighter body weight meant a faster time. This is not what sweat does. Sweat is how the human body cools itself. Lázaro had just sealed every pore on the upper half of his body shut. Did he know what he had done? He did not. The starter's gun fired. For the first 10 miles, he held his place. Inside his body, the engine was already overheating. His pores tried to push out sweat. The sweat hit the inside of the wax layer and could not get through. His body temperature climbed past 100, past 102, past 104. Just past the halfway point, near the village of Sollentuna, he fell for the first time. He got up, he kept running. By the 19-mile mark, his brain was beginning to cook inside his skull. He collapsed at the 30-kilometer mark and did not get back up. A doctor reached him within seconds and took his temperature. 41 degrees Celsius, 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit. They wrapped him in blankets, which trapped the heat even more and loaded him into a horse-drawn medical wagon. By the time he reached Seraphim Hospital, he was unconscious. He never woke up. At 6 a.m. on July 15, 1912, Francisco Lázaro stopped breathing. He was the first athlete to die at the modern Olympic Games. 23,000 people came to his memorial service in Stockholm. A collection raised about $3,800 for his widow and his baby daughter, which was a fortune for a carpenter's family in 1912. A monument was placed at the marathon's turning point in Sollentuna. The official cause of death given to the public was severe dehydration. That was the polite version. It hid the wax. The Olympic movement did not change a single rule about marathon safety after his death. There was no temperature limit added. There was no requirement for water stations every mile. There was no rule about what runners could and could not put on their skin. Lázaro's death was not treated as a system failure. It was treated as one runner's bad decision. For 48 years, no athlete died at a Summer Olympic Games. Long enough for the world to forget Francisco Lázaro. Long enough for the same kind of preventable death to happen again on a different road in a different country. His name was Knud Enemark Jensen. He was 22 years old from Aarhus, Denmark, and on August 26, 1960, he was lined up with his 3 Danish teammates at the start of the 100-kilometer team time trial at the Rome Olympics. The temperature on the Via Cristoforo Colombo reached 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The same temperature that had killed Lázaro 48 years earlier. The race began at noon, the hottest hour of the day, on a road of black asphalt in direct sunlight. The Italian organizers could have moved the start time. They did not. Before this gets even worse, hit subscribe right now, because what happens to Knud Enemark Jensen on that road is the reason the Olympics started drug testing athletes in the first place. There is a second piece of equipment in this story, and it is what was missing. In 1960, professional cyclists did not wear helmets. The hard plastic helmets every rider wears today did not exist. A cyclist racing at the Olympics in 1960 wore a thin cotton cap called a casquette. It did absolutely nothing to protect the rider's skull. There is a third piece of equipment. According to a statement made later by the Danish team's trainer, a man named Olaf Jorgensen, the trainer had given his 4 riders a stimulant called Roniacol. Reports at the time spoke of amphetamines. The truth has never been completely established. The race began. The road shimmered in the heat. About 20 kilometers from the finish, Jensen told his teammates he was dizzy. His bicycle began to wobble. 2 teammates reached across and grabbed the back of his shirt to keep him upright. For 5 kilometers, they carried him by his shirt while he pedaled with his eyes closed. Then he opened his eyes, said he was okay, and his teammate let go. The next moment, Knud Enemark Jensen passed out. He fell off his bicycle. He hit the asphalt at full racing speed. The crown of his head struck the pavement so hard that his skull cracked. They carried him to a canvas medical tent near the finish line. The temperature inside the tent reached 50 degrees Celsius, 122 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 degrees hotter than the road that had just killed him. He died inside that tent later that afternoon. The IOC president used Jensen's death as the reason to start the world's first Olympic anti-doping program. Bicycle helmets did not become required equipment for professional cycling until 2003. That is 43 years after Knud Enemark Jensen cracked his skull open on Italian asphalt because the only thing on his head was a cotton cap. But the heat and a missing helmet are not the only ways an Olympic equipment failure can kill an athlete. Sometimes the equipment is the entire course itself. 4 years after Jensen died, 2 more athletes were going to die at the very same Olympic Games. In the same week, in the same Austrian mountain town. His name was Kazimierz Kai Skrzypecki. He was 58 years old. He had been born in Poland in 1905. As a young man, he had become a fighter pilot in the Royal Air Force. He had survived the Battle of Britain. He had survived a war that killed 50 million people. And he had discovered, late in life, that he loved going down ice chutes on a wooden sled at terrifying speed. In January 1964, luge was about to become an Olympic sport for the very first time. Kai Skrzypecki had qualified for Great Britain's tiny luge team. He was the oldest competitor in the entire Olympic event by more than 30 years. The track at Eagles near Innsbruck had a problem nobody outside of luge knows. Innsbruck in January 1964 was unusually warm. The natural ice on the track had been melting and refreezing into uneven layers. Some sections were perfectly hard ice. Others were softer. A luge sled going 70 miles an hour does not handle a soft patch of ice the same way it handles a hard patch. The luge community knew. 2 days before Kai Skrzypecki crashed, the bobsled crews on the same mountain had complained publicly that their track was too dangerous. The Olympic organizers had brushed the complaints off. On the morning of January 21st, 1964, 8 days before the opening ceremony, Kai Skrzypecki climbed onto a small wooden sled. The sled was barely the size of a kitchen tray. He lay on his back, he pulled on a steering cord, he pushed off. Gravity took over. Somewhere in the middle of the track, in a section that has never been precisely identified, the sled left its line. The wooden runners caught a soft patch of refrozen ice and skipped sideways. He went off the track. He was 58 years old. His body, traveling at over 60 miles an hour, came off the wooden sled and tumbled across hard surfaces never meant to be hit by a human being. He fractured his skull. He fractured his pelvis. He fractured his arm. He tore his aorta, the main pipe that carries blood out of the heart. The Austrian doctors rushed him into emergency surgery. They almost saved him. His heart was still beating when they made the final repairs. Then his heart stopped. The Royal Air Force pilot who had survived the Battle of Britain died on an operating table in Innsbruck the next morning. He was the first competitor in Olympic luge history. He never got to compete in an Olympic luge race. The IOC held an emergency meeting. They decided not to cancel the event. They modified the section where he crashed, added some wooden barriers, put more workers on overnight ice maintenance, and ran the luge competition as planned 8 days later. 3 days after he died on January 25th, 1964, another Olympic athlete was going to die on a different course on the same mountain. His name was Ross Milne. He was 19 years old, an Australian alpine skier from a tobacco farm in Myrtleford, Victoria. He had spent most of 1963 racing in Europe to learn the courses. He was the best young skier his country had ever produced. The Pacherkofel downhill course was a problem from the beginning. The winter of 1963 to 1964 had been unusually warm. There was not enough natural snow on the upper sections. The Austrian organizers had to truck artificial snow up the mountain and pack it down by hand. Artificial snow is harder and faster than natural snow. The course was running faster than it had ever been designed to run. The skiers had been complaining. A skier from Liechtenstein named Edmund Schadler had crashed badly in training and broken several bones. The reigning French downhill star, Émile Viola, had also crashed and was injured. The course had a section where it dropped over a ridge at full speed and dumped the skier into a fast, straight flanked by trees. The trees were not far enough back. The Austrian organizers' answer was to place sandbags around a few of the trees. Sandbags. As if a skier going 70 miles an hour was going to bounce off a sandbag. Ross Milne pushed off the top of the course at full speed. He approached the section where the course came over the ridge. He came over the crest, accelerating. Standing on the course just past the crest was a small group of other ski racers. They had stopped to study the difficult passage. They were not supposed to be there. Ross Milne came over the crest at 80 kilometers an hour and saw the bodies of other men in front of him. He had a fraction of a second to decide. He could not stop. He had to swerve. The swerve took him off the prepared course. The swerve sent him directly into the trees. He hit the tree at over 60 miles an hour. The impact crushed his skull, broke his thigh bone, and caused massive internal injuries. He was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital in Innsbruck. The Innsbruck Organizing Committee released their official report. The fatal accident, they wrote, had happened on an entirely innocuous part of the course. The safety measures, they wrote, had been far above the normal level. Some IOC officials suggested in private meetings that skiers from the Southern Hemisphere should not be allowed to compete in Olympic downhill at all. This was a lie. The truth, told to the Milne family by witnesses, was that Ross had not caught an edge. He had swerved at full speed to avoid hitting a group of other skiers who were standing on the active racing line. He had saved their lives at the cost of his own. But the Innsbruck Games were not the last time an Olympic Games would put a piece of equipment on a course where it could kill someone. 24 years later, the same kind of accident happened again. This time, the way he died was so violent that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police could not identify his body for hours. His name was Jörg Oberhammer. He was 47 years old, Austria's top knee surgeon, the team doctor for the Austrian Ski Federation, and the father of 4 children. On the morning of February 25th, 1988, he was working at the Calgary Winter Olympics on a slope called Mount Allen. Mount Allen had been built specifically for the Calgary Olympics. There was not enough natural snow most years, so the Olympic organizers had installed massive snowmaking machines and ski grooming machines called Snowcats. A Snowcat is a tractor about the size of a small bulldozer with metal treads and giant rotating cylinders called tillers. It weighs around 6,000 pounds. The first run of the men's giant slalom had finished. There was a 90-minute break before the second run. During the break, the course workers run snowcats up and down the racing line to smooth out the chopped snow. Oberhammer had treated one of his Austrian skiers for a stomachache and was now skiing down a side trail to get to the bottom of the course. He did not know that one of the snowcats was working on a side trail that morning, in a spot where two ski trails came together at a blind corner. At the same time, Oberhammer was skiing down. A Canadian television technician named Brian Knock, 55 years old, was skiing down a different trail. Neither one saw the other coming. Neither one saw the snowcat below them. The two men, both moving at about 30 miles an hour, hit each other almost head on. Brian Knock was thrown sideways into the right side of the snowcat. He survived. Oberhammer was thrown directly forward. He landed under the front of the machine. The driver felt a small bump. He could not tell what it was. He kept driving forward. The metal treads ran over Oberhammer's chest, then his head. The tiller on the back, with steel teeth designed to chop ice, ran over him next. He died instantly. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police could not identify the body for 7 hours. The damage to his face was so severe that his features were unrecognizable. The Austrian skiers in the women's downhill the next day wore black armbands. One of Oberhammer's patients, a giant slalom skier named Hubert Strolz, won the silver medal in the second run later that same afternoon. He stood on the podium with tears streaming down his face. The Calgary investigation took 2 days. The conclusion was that nobody was at fault. The trails had been laid out according to standard rules. 4 years later, at the next Winter Olympics, an athlete was going to die after colliding with a snow grooming machine on an active competition slope. His name was Nicolas Bogetai. He was 27 years old, a carpenter from a small town in Switzerland called Salvan, married with 2 children. He was the 1991 Swiss national champion in speed skiing. Speed skiing is the simplest and most dangerous skiing event ever invented. The skier puts on a pair of extra long skis, an aerodynamic helmet, and a tight rubber suit. He stands at the top of an extremely steep, extremely straight track. He just goes straight down. The fastest speed skiers reach 130 miles per hour. That is faster than most race cars. On the morning of February 22nd, 1992, the day of the speed skiing finals at the Albertville Winter Olympics, Bogetai decided to take a warm-up run on a public slope near the competition course. 3 of his American friends went with him. The slope had bumps and dips. The men were taking jumps, catching air over the bumps, racing each other to the bottom. What they did not know, or what they were told but did not listen to, was that a snow grooming machine was working on that slope. A 6,000-pound snowcat. It was sitting just below a small ridge. The ridge was high enough to hide the entire machine from the view of a skier coming down the run. Nicolas Bogetai went airborne over the bump. When his skis left the snow, he could not see what was below him. By the time he came back down, the snowcat was directly under his landing line. He was in the air. He was on top of the machine. He was dead. The collision was head on. He hit the front of the snowcat with his full body weight at racing speed. His teammate Pierre-Yves Jorand, following close behind, saw the bump and managed to swerve at the last possible moment. He missed the snowcat by inches. He lived. Bogetai had been a fraction of a second too early. He died on the snow next to the machine before any rescue worker could reach him. He left a wife, 2 children, and a Swiss national title. The speed skiing finals went ahead 3 hours later. 2 Swiss skiers withdrew in protest. The rest of the team competed. Speed skiing was never made an Olympic medal sport. After Albertville, the demonstration was quietly retired. The unofficial reason was that nobody wanted another Bogetai on their hands. A snowcat had just killed an Olympic athlete on a public slope 4 years after a snowcat had killed an Olympic team doctor on a public slope. 2 snowcats, 2 deaths, same circumstances, same blind ridge, same warning that should have been given, 6 athletes, 6 pieces of equipment, a coat of cow fat that suffocated a marathon runner from the inside, a road in Rome at noon, and a missing helmet, a wooden sled on a soft patch of ice, a pair of skis on an artificial snow course where someone forgot to move the witnesses, a snow grooming machine on a side trail, another snow grooming machine on an active public slope. In every case, the equipment was supposed to be safe. In every case, the people in charge had been warned. Francisco Lázaro had a doctor's note. Knud Enemark Jensen had a trainer who told him the pill would help. Kazimierz Kai Skrzypewski had been told the track met the standard. Ross Milne had been told the course had safety measures far above the normal level. Jörg Oberhammer had been told the side trails were clear. Nicholas Bokertai had been told the snowcat had a flashing light. Every one of those statements turned out to be either wrong, incomplete, or a lie. The Olympic Games keep happening every 2 years. The athletes keep arriving. And every Olympic cycle, somewhere on a slope, or a track, or a road, another piece of equipment that everyone said was safe is going to fail. The only question is whose name will be added to the list. Subscribe. The next 6 are already coming.